Welcome to SmithWeekly Discussions, an occasional program for our members of SmithWeekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position along with your favorite beverage to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine our show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience at SmithWeekly, including Brian H., Luke A., Chris P., Mark R., and Jackie A. On the program today, we've got a new company that will be introduced along with a returning guest that has joined us. Mr. Heye Daun is with us. Heye is the president and CEO of Koryx Copper, a Namibian-focused copper project developer and explorer advancing the Haib copper project in South Namibia, which holds an all-category resource of about 5.7 billion pounds of copper at a cutoff grade of 0.25% copper, with potential for expansion through further exploration of nearby targets within the license area. The company holds an option on 2 copper exploration licenses in neighboring Zambia within the Zambian Copper Belt region. Koryx Copper is listed on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol KRY and on the US OTC markets under the symbol KRYXF, and also on the Namibian Stock Exchange under the symbol KYX. Mr. Daun, welcome back to the podcast.
Great. Thank you for having me, Andrew.
Yeah, hi. It's great to have you back on the program. And I guess to start things off here, it's actually been a while since you were on the program. And while we also have some new audience who may not know of you, you've also changed jobs since we last had you on the program. So with that, why don't you talk a little bit about your experience here for the audience, as well as challenges and successes, including the most recent successful outcome with Osino Resources.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate that. So in a quick nutshell, I'm a Namibian-born of German descent mining engineer. I live in South Africa, but I have strong roots in Namibia. My brother is a cattle rancher there, etc. I became a mining engineer working for Rio Tinto in Namibia in uranium mining. And then after many twists and turns, basically through Africa, mainly mining, some couple of years in finance, eventually in 2009, became a mining entrepreneur. And we acquired a gold project in Namibia at that time, 1.9 million ounce resource. And we drilled it out, grew it, made it better, and sold it to B2 Gold. B2 Gold built a very successful gold mine. That kind of set me up as doing what I'm doing here. Again, in 2016, there was another company I ran, turnaround situation, which became Lumina Gold through a merger. So I got to know Ross Beatty and very high quality Canadian money. And they became my founding shareholders in my biggest success so far, which was called Osino. You referred to it, which we started in 2016, which was a gold exploration company in Namibia again, where over a period of about 8 years, from 2016 to 2024, we made a we did a large scale exploration program, made 2 discoveries, a big one and a smaller one. We raised about $120 million, spent that, drilled 300,000 meters, and got that discovery through multiple technical studies all the way to shovel-ready stage. And we then sold it in a competitive process to a Chinese big $7 billion, $10 billion Chinese gold miner. And that deal closed at the end of last year. So that's basically my track record. And then during that time, whilst we were closing the Osino deal, because I knew that company was gone, and I was looking to do something else in Namibia, capitalizing on my track record and my success in Namibia. And then I basically took over management control of this new company, which we're talking about today, and trying to do it again. Back to you. Sorry, that was a long intro.
Good stuff, Heye. I really appreciate that. And the good thing is you're young enough. We hope you'll stick around and continue here. And this is just another one to start up and make a success. This one's interesting because I definitely want to talk to you about copper in Namibia here in a moment, but it's an interesting one. And the good thing is you've had a number of successes and yet you're still quite young. And so hopefully you've been incentivized to stay in the business and not right away in the sunset too early. But we'll see how that progresses in the coming years and see how much more gray hair you and I both get, white hair as well. How about the copper market, Heye? This is an area that is different from gold. Any thoughts there on the copper market in terms of the current price, some of the current events in the market, anything that strikes you on S&D, supply and demand, as well as investor sentiment for development and exploration companies in Africa that are focused on copper?
Okay, great. Wow, you asked a lot there. I'll try and hit it off. Firstly, just to comment on what you said, the gray hairs and what am I going to do? I'm very fortunate that I love doing what I'm doing. I've made some money. I don't really need to do this, but I enjoy it. And I invest heavily in my own deals, which you can see with Koryx. So that gives your listeners and potential investors some life insurance, I like to call it. So yeah, no, I really enjoy doing this. Why from gold to copper? Of course, gold used to be my sweet spot all along. It's worked in gold forever. But the basic principles are the same. Our core competence is identify, acquire, advance, and divest. And the drivers, public market companies, gold, copper, it's very similar. This is open pit mining. It's in Namibia. It's very similar. Very same permitting process, same everything. And that's very important because it gives us the confidence that we can do this again. We've just very recently done it, and we're doing it with the same team again. So it's a huge confidence and safety factor in a way for investors. It reduces the uncertainty significantly. So that's just quickly the background how from gold to copper. In terms of the copper market, obviously I'm just saying tongue in cheek here, dumb mining engineer. I'm not an economist, not a copper expert either, but I'm learning fast. What's obviously key, everybody knows about the sort of decarbonization, the e-revolution. Whether you agree with the politics behind it or not is a different story, but the fact is the world needs a lot more copper. So supply and demand fundamentals are obviously exceptional. I enjoyed that about the copper sector as opposed to gold because even though whilst we were doing Osino, we had a rising gold price, the equities weren't doing anything. So it was actually a hard slog. Whereas in copper, there was the investor universe is so much bigger. Everybody in the world wants to invest in copper companies. So that's good. I do believe in the very strong supply and demand fundamentals with copper. And I'll just give you one soundbite here that I find very interesting. I don't know if you're aware that right now the treatment charges out of China that the Chinese smelters pay to buy copper concentrate have gone negative. It means that the Chinese concentrator operators pay you to treat their copper concentrate. Just shows you how huge that demand for concentrate is. Obviously, added to that is Trump's own some of the statements he made around securing the US or the US's own critical metal supply chains, etc. So I think the macro fundamentals for copper are excellent, which is good for us. But for me, as I started this off by saying, I'm just a dumb mining engineer, so I try to focus on the things that I can control, and that is actually execution, getting stuff done, crossing the T's, dotting the I's. Share prices will be volatile, but the ultimate price setter is going to be when we sell this company, as we've done before, and that very likely could be a Western group, but very likely could be a Chinese group too, which speaks to that supply and demand situation that I alluded to earlier.
Lots of stuff there. We found in some of these podcasts with some of the changes in the administration in the U.S. We got to be careful about what we say, otherwise we get hit by some of our distribution platforms like YouTube with respect to some of the censorship that still occurs on some of these things. So it's a little bit funny.
You know
Your
what?
app,
On that, I find that incredible. Sorry to insert this political statement, but I find that incredible. I've also experienced it. Just making some very bland statements and you get censored. I couldn't believe it. It opened my eyes. So, but yeah, thanks for highlighting it. From a South African perspective, a lot of some of these political changes that have taken place are very positive for us. I'm very thankful for the people that are sticking out their heads. It's helping us down here too.
what's interesting about this, Heye, is you're a mining engineer, so you can provide information on this program about how to engineer and construct a mine based on your credentials and your experience. Let's be honest, experience is actually the biggest degree you have, not some university degree that says you know something. Besides that point, engineering varies depending on who you talk to. You can talk to 10 engineers and probably 8 of them have different opinions, right? Just like doctors, lawyers, accountants, etc. What's funny about this is you can come on and provide your professional opinion, and yet somehow these social media platforms, they censor it based on what they believe to be correct. I would guess a lot of these social media platforms don't employ full-time mining engineers. Go through this to find out if this opinion was correct or this advice was correct or not. It doesn't matter. You're providing your opinion, and you should have the freedom to do so, even if someone doesn't agree with you or if someone believes it's not sound engineering. And so it's really sad when social media uses these types of tactics. They're very pathetic. So let's move on here. What caught my attention was certainly the Chinese influence and the Chinese interest in copper projects, not only in Africa, but also in Central and South America as well, among other places. Also, the tough slog with Osino and some of the challenges there. Obviously, it turned into a good outcome, but certainly a tough slog. It's quite interesting in that sense, Heye, as well, some of the things that have come about here. With that, I'd like to ask you a little bit about. Oh, and by the way, very good comments with respect to the politics behind copper and those and why demand is driving in that direction. That's one we'll leave for another conversation as well. I think you and I agree very much on that bit as well. But nonetheless, copper is needed. Doesn't matter what position you take. A lot of copper is needed. With Namibia, generally the country is not known for copper production. You know, we have uranium, we've got gold, we've got diamonds, we've got onshore and offshore oil and gas exploration happening. Talk a little bit about the history of copper in Namibia and why you think it works.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to correct you. You're right. The world doesn't think of Namibia in terms of copper because they see it in terms of uranium and diamonds. That's more recent. But Namibia is smack bang in the middle of that Pan African belt. And the Pan African belt is a belt of rocks that runs from central Namibia all the way into Zambia and Congo. So even Kamoa, Kakula, Ivanhoe, all these things that everybody knows, it's the same rocks. That is sedimentary copper. And sedimentary copper is generally speaking quite high grade or higher grade, but smaller, not the same size. On the other side of the coin and on the other side of the world, especially in the Andean, the subduction zone that runs through South America, the Rockies, the Andes, all of that, you get porphyries. Porphyries is a volcanic product. It's very, very different to sedimentary. And porphyries, very broadly speaking, tend to be very large, consistent, but low grade. Now, the Koryx project that we have is a porphyry, which is actually unusual because there are not that many porphyries in Southern Africa. Going back to Namibia as a jurisdiction, I mean, Newmont owned and operated a copper mine in Namibia, so there's a smelter, etc. So there is quite established copper history in Namibia.
When investors look at Namibia, they think about these other commodities being produced in Namibia, and copper is not necessarily one of those. And you hit it that there is a history here, and that obviously this project that Koryx has potentially ties into that strategy of also becoming a copper producer in the future, potentially from this project and increasing copper exportation from Namibia. So I wanted to have you just talk a little bit about why Namibia as a jurisdiction can work very well for copper. Obviously, it's quite friendly to mining.
Oh yes, let me give you a few sound bites there. You know, Namibia in the 1970s was administered by South Africa and it was partially explored by big groups, especially Anglo and Rio Tinto. Rio Tinto had the Rossing uranium mine, which they owned until recently. And Koryx, the company that I now run, actually was drilled by Rio Tinto in the very early days. So it has an excellent technical pedigree. And Anglo did work, you know, their zinc mines, their other base metal mines. So Namibia does have these type of projects. What's great about Koryx, of course, is that it's very large. I talked about porphyries. These porphyries tend to be big, consistent, and low grade, and Haib is exactly that. But being in Namibia, obviously, it has other advantages. It doesn't have the altitude that you've got with these Andean porphyries. It's the project sitting at only 400 meters altitude, and it's got great infrastructure and cheap operating conditions, etc. So it has many advantages that make up for the slightly lower grade or somewhat lower grade. It's definitely a moderate to low grade deposit. But then the real opportunity for us is that it was in the wrong hands for too long. And this happens all the time. Like projects are in the wrong hands, haphazard work gets done or no work over a long period of time, and these projects kind of get forgotten about, and then somebody comes along that knows how to raise money and that's got a vision and some drive and turns them into something, and that's exactly what we're doing here.
Yeah, that's great, Haya. Yeah, I can think of a couple companies, one specifically in Namibia that's in the exact same case. So, very good information here, and good to have you here to help advance this project forward. It is quite large, actually, where it is stands today, and of course, with the mineral resource estimate that's presently out, and then of course the work going to improve that as well. Which we should get into the company now. Why don't you just give us and you already started to do that, give us just a brief overview of the company, maybe a little bit on the background, and then really what made you take the job here coming out of the Osino success?
So right now, we are Canadian listed, you mentioned at the beginning. Our cornerstone asset is the advanced stage Haib porphyry open pit copper deposit in southern Namibia. Haib has an excellent pedigree. It was actually discovered by the German colonials around 100 years ago. But in the 1970s, Rio Tinto acquired it when they were getting active in Namibian uranium. So they drilled it significantly in a systematic pattern and delineated this very large copper porphyry deposit. Remember, in the 1970s, copper prices were low, so it was put on the back burner on an average grade of about 0.3% copper. Then, subsequent to Rio Tinto, when they got sidetracked into uranium and other things, this project fell into the wrong hands. So it was kind of owned by a succession of juniors and other companies. Eventually, Teck Resources entered Namibia and owned the project, did a bit more work, but never properly. And so this company just languished. We then took over at the beginning, we got involved at the beginning of last year towards the end of the sales process of my previous company, Osino. And basically, we took over management control via financing. This company was a nothing company at that stage. It had a $5 million market cap. We invested 102, took over management control, basically cleaned up, restructured, rolled back the stock, got Ross Beatty and all the successful investors that come with us involved, and re-rated the stock quite significantly. We're about a $70 million market cap now, got about $10, $12 million in the bank. And we are now advancing, basically right sizing and optimizing this project and advancing it in order to get it to the shovel ready stage. I told you our core competence is identify, acquire, advance. That's what we're doing. And right size, optimize means drill the hell out of it, make it bigger, make it better, get the grade up a bit. At the same time, complete all the technical studies to demonstrate that a conventional processing route, this is flotation, producing a concentrate rather than a hydrometallurgical process which produces copper cathode. So concentrate only, which is just like all the other mines I mentioned in the Andes, etc. do it. Once we demonstrate that, or through the process of de-risking and advancement, you expect a re-rate and an eventual sale of the company. That's really it.
Just a little bit more detail on cap structure, Heye. Just cover off where we stand. You mentioned the cash, shares on issue, as well as if you can give a few specifics as to the major shareholders, including yourself and management.
So cap structure at the moment, we have just over 70 million shares outstanding. We're trading around $1 Canadian, talking Canadian dollars. We have there's a fair amount of not overly, not too much warrants and options. So a total of about, so we got 8 million warrants, 5 million RSUs, and 1.7 million options. So total fully diluted shares outstanding, 85 million shares. Most of those warrants and options are in the money, so they'll exercise. So that's some more money coming in. So that's the cap structure. Oh yes, you asked me about key shareholders. So we inherited this company with a very diversified shareholder base. We did the rollback first, which was a cleanup, and we inherited Teck and Mackenzie Investments out of Toronto, big Toronto pension fund, as the only investors of note. Teck owned the company previously, did a divestment into a junior, which we took over. So Teck is a friendly but passive shareholder. They own about 7%. Mackenzie owns about 8-9%. They are active. They followed every financing and they're very supportive. So it's great to have them there. And then I brought in my own fan club, so to speak, which is Ross Beatty. Forgot what he owns, 5-6%. We brought in resource capital funds out of Denver, which a lot of you will know, and then a bunch of European investors like Ixios out of Paris, Conwave, Swiss, Commodity Discovery Fund. Like these are all good early stage mining investors. Personally, I don't have the exact numbers, but I've invested a significant amount of money. I think I'm up to about $3 million. I put $2 million into the last financing. It's 10% of the total. And I've bought 400,000 or 500,000 Canadian dollars in the market in the last couple of weeks and months. You can see it that's disclosed. So I want to become the biggest shareholders. I have total confidence in this project. I have total confidence in my own ability to advance it. And I also have total confidence in our ability to create a credible project and be able to sell it. And that's why I see it as a major opportunity for myself. And that's why I want to own more. Yeah, so that's it. So highly, I think a good shareholder base of both retail and institutional, and strong insider ownership that will continue to grow.
Well put, and certainly well aligned, Heye. So I appreciate you going through that there. Just some of the key staff. I know there's people coming over from the Osino team. It's a lot of the same group. Just talk about some of the key staff at the company, what they bring to the table.
Yeah, no, that's good. Obviously, this is not just me. The team is key. Like we have success because of good people that we have around us. So, the key hire that we made recently was a chap by the name of Trevor Farber. He's a South African mining engineer. He is now the COO. He coordinates all of the technical study and exploration activities, and also he's helping me with promotion and marketing because living in Cape Town, being based down here in Southern Africa, the disadvantage is that with a lot of travel with marketing, you're constantly on the road. So he's helping me with that, and he also has broadened our technical expertise. He's a copper expert. He used to work for Meteorix, which was a South African mid-tier copper producer specialist in Southern Africa. He also built the Alphamin BC tin mine. That's $1 billion project, biggest producer of tin in the DLC. So that's quite well known because it has a lot of US investors. That's why I mention it. So he's been a key member of the executive team. The rest are old Osino team members: Charles Creasy, Steve Burks, John Andrew. So these are feasibility study specialists, exploration specialists, and metallurgical specialists. And then underneath them, we've got a growing team of exploration staff because at the moment our biggest activities are drilling. We're ramping up from 4 rigs to 8, and studies, managing all the interdependent engineering infrastructure studies towards the technical study that we want to publish later this year. So that's the team basically. And then, of course, my old business partner, Alan Friedman, he's our chairman. Everything I've done in the markets, I've done with him. He was my introduction to Canadian capital markets. He lives in Toronto. He's a street and deal guy. And so he complements me very well because I'm more of a technical execution, getting stuff done guy. So that's the team.
Excellent, Heye. I appreciate you going through that. A lot of familiar names there. Good to have a good team put together for this, and certainly the Namibian focus and the expertise in Namibia is well backed. Let's see, recent drilling results coming out of Haib. You have results that just came out here in late May. Talk about some of those results and talk a little bit about what you guys expect to complete on this current exploration program to finish up and what your expectations are.
The recent results, I was going to say more of the same, but that sounds boring. But I consider boring good. More of the same means we have an existing mineral resource that we're looking to make bigger and better, and that's why more of the same is good, because if it's confirmatory, if it's infill drilling, that's what you want. So therefore, yes, we are doing that. But at the same time, we also want new and better stuff. We want higher grades, and we want to grow the size of the deposit. And I think in this latest press release, we had a bit of all of that. There was one noteworthy intercept of 570 meters at 0.34% copper. So that's excellent because it indicates size, and this result goes beyond the current pit depth. So it opens up the resource at depth. If you decipher that interval and you actually look what it comprises of, you can see these higher grade shoots within that going like 50 to 70 meters at 0.45 to even 0.55% copper. So that's excellent. Those are the higher grade, I shouldn't call them shoots because they're not really shoots, they're higher grade domains that we are targeting. So that's the aim of this drilling program. Altogether, we are trying to drill as much as possible. Basically, I think about it this way: I have 3 arrows in my quiver, and these arrows intended to improve the grade. The first one is to target higher grade areas. The second one is to bring in byproducts. And the third one is just to define the deposit better and be better able to domain it and constrain it, which should result in a grade improvement. And so that's what we're aiming to do with this drilling. So it's infill drilling, growth drilling, and so forth. But obviously the byproducts, I can go to just one or two comments on that. Because the previous owners had never really had funding, this project was never properly assayed for byproducts, particularly moly and gold. Now, most of these big porphyries that people know, the byproducts are a very significant part of the revenues. In our case, unfortunately, the byproducts are not huge, but they are significant, in particular moly and then a little bit less gold. So, as part of the drilling that we're doing now, we're also assaying everything for byproducts for moly and gold, and that will eventually increase the copper equivalent grade. That's really the aim here. We're currently sitting at 0.35% copper only, We're looking to get the grade to something like zero point 0.4, maybe a bit more of copper equivalent once we bring out the new mineral resource. And with that, no doubt we have a highly profitable and economic large-scale project.
Any other indications of byproducts in there, Heye, beyond gold
No,
and moly?
no, nothing really. But also, there's another byproduct which you don't want, which is arsenic. So luckily, and that's good for us, this is a very clean deposit. It's got very little arsenic. It's a sulfide deposit, and it will produce a clean concentrate, which is very sought after. You might be familiar that you get all sorts of concentrates. Concentrates often come with arsenic and other bad things that are difficult for smelters and refineries to treat. And this project doesn't have any of it, and that's why we're already getting significant interest from off-takers and traders like Glencore and the Sumitomo and the major metals trading companies, because they are very interested in clean concentrates, which they use to blend and obviously trade with all over the world.
Excellent. Appreciate that. That's good stuff there. And basically, we have good drill results that are proving this up to show the size and scale that I think you're looking for. And that's coming through well. And then, of course, pretty clean here. We got good byproducts. Okay, let's talk a little bit about, you guys are planning to provide a revised mineral resource estimate at some point, maybe at the end of the year. Talk a little bit about that. And then also, what's the next level of economic study that you guys have planned?
Okay, yeah, no, definitely a mineral resource update at the end of the year. It's taking a bit of time because we've got to complete the drilling, and one of our biggest issues is terrain. It's highly rugged terrain, so we've got to get the drill rigs up there, and we're using these man-portable rigs, which are very slow because in order to get them up on the mountains, you can't get truck-mounted big rigs on there. So that's just sort of an operational challenge, but we're dealing with it. But that's what's driving the timing to the next mineral resource update. We also, by the way, sorry, let me digress. We're doing excellent technical work, including using some US-based porphyry experts, a chap by the name of Warren Pratt, who are helping us decipher the geological code over here. And all of that takes time. But that's very, very valuable work that eventually improves this mineral resource significantly. So that's happening. In parallel with that, we're doing all these metallurgical and infrastructure studies, which will culminate in a technical report. And you asked me, what is it going to be? Is it a PEA or pre-FS? To be honest, I don't know yet. We're grappling with this because, and there are pros and cons. A PEA, you can use inferred resources, which you can't use with a pre-feas. But a PEA doesn't have as much credibility, even though our PEAs tend to be very good. But obviously, a PEA is usually a marketing document. It's geared towards the equity market, whereas a pre-feasibility is more geared towards corporate buyers who don't really take PEAs that seriously. So for us, we would like to get both out as soon as possible, but we got to be realistic on timing. And that's why at the moment it looks like it's going to be a high quality PEA with a mineral resource update before the end of the year, and then a pre-feasibility study in quick succession thereafter, probably 4 or 5 months later, so in the second quarter next year. And that's a little bit different to what we said originally. If you listen to some of my earlier interviews or press releases, we previously said we would do no PEA and only a pre-feasibility study at the end of this year. But we're just changing that slightly because we want to bring in these additional grade improvement that we think we're going to achieve, but it's taking a little bit longer. Hope that answers your question.
Good characterization of PEA versus PFS. I think that's right on. With respect to some of the other work that's ongoing in parallel here, metallurgy, any potential expectation based on your knowledge of these deposit types, where we would see recoveries land higher, roughly? Give us a rough range of recoveries, what you would expect, and then anything on environmental permitting baseline work.
No, you know what? On that side, this project is excellent. The previous operators already did high quality metallurgical test work that indicated that conventional flotation, sulfide flotation, is possible and will achieve high recoveries. We've confirmed that work, and we're seeing recoveries in the early 90s. Obviously, in processing plant conditions might be slightly lower. So I think in the technical studies we're going to look at like high 80s, early 90s for recovery, which is very good for sulfide flotation project. So that's excellent. That box is ticked. In terms of issues, environmental, luckily nothing. We have a straightforward project. We have no environmental fatal flaws. The project is located in an area with a very low population density. There's no one around, no communities, no birds and bees, no frogs, nothing. It's desert. and we're sitting on state land. And again, that I must explain that in the US, being on state land is not a good thing because then you have to deal with the federal agencies. In Namibia, it's a good thing because you don't have to deal with difficult landowners. So therefore, from that perspective, no issues. Metallurgically, no issues. There's an opportunity to use innovative technologies like pre-concentration, etc. And we're doing all of the test work to improve the recovery and bring down the costs. So no, everything very clear on that front. The only thing, I guess, the only slightly negative thing one could say in balance is that it's very hard rock. So our power consumption is relatively high. But I mean, that's just an engineering problem, and there's an engineering solution to that.
Talk about water. What's the water plan here?
So water, as you can imagine, Namibia, a desert environment, so water is always limited. We have an ideal location. We're located only 9 kilometers north of the Orange River. The Orange River is a significant river that's the boundary between South Africa and Namibia. It has massive agriculture on both sides of it, grapes, dates, all sorts of fruit that gets produced and gets exported across the world. And that river flows constantly. So that will be our primary source of supply. And we've already initiated the permitting process to access that water. Of course, there'll be stakeholder engagement because you have competing water users, etc. But that's a process that's well understood. There's also another opportunity, which is a large dam that's around 200 kilometers to the north of us. And that water is currently unutilized. That dam was only completed a few years ago, and the Namibian water authorities very much would like us to access that. It's gonna require a bit more capital, but will be an excellent long-term source of water as well. And we're doing all these trade-off analyses now to figure out what the optimal way is of getting the water to site. But certainly there's enough water there. We're going to describe this in the next technical study.
Good to hear on some of those sources. Obviously, it's not the same area as some of our troubled friends to the north in the uranium district that are having to deal with desal and other water issues up there. So good stuff on that front. I have a very good location here in terms of some of the optionality with respect to water and some of the trade-offs you guys are going to look at. I want to have you just talk a little bit about this because I think it's important. When you look at projects of similar grade and size, Heye, any peer comparables that you would point out as to something that would match up to this? And with that, also, what do you think on size and production profile of a primary copper project do you see that would attract a major in Namibia for this type of project? Just talk a little bit about size and profile and then any peer comparables that you could point to or just project comparables.
Yeah, no, thanks. That's a good one. I have some excellent comps. I'll give you three. The first one is Bingham Canyon near Salt Lake City in Utah, which everybody in the US knows. I think it's the biggest open pit in the world. It's owned by Rio Tinto. The next comp would be a big South African porphyry called Palabora, another Rio Tinto operation. And then third one would be some of the Zambian big open pits that First Quantum and Barrick have. So obviously we need to compare apples with apples, and that's why I say you need to compare porphyry with porphyry. Salt Lake City or Bingham Canyon is big porphyry. They're operating at about 0.35% copper. And our mineral resource grade at the moment is 0.35% copper. And there are other comps. So 0.35% copper is very doable. There's Boliden in Sweden that operates at 0.2% copper. So there are operations out there that operate profitably at significantly lower grades. So that's why just dealing with the grade. Then Palabora in South Africa was operating at a very similar grade for years. And it was one of the lowest cost copper producers in the world. Big open pit, same thing. So just giving you a sense here that porphyry grades at 0.35% copper, quite well understood and profitably mined. Of course, the devil is in the detail. The byproducts is a big thing. A lot of these lower grade deposits work because they have significant byproducts. We do have those byproducts, but to a lesser extent, but they've never been included. And that's why we're doing the assaying to bring the byproducts to book rather, especially moly and gold. On the Zambian comparatives, that's very important because Zambia is very hot at the moment, and Ivanhoe and Friedland and some of these other mines producing in Zambia are getting a lot of attention. And First Quantum certainly very important because Cobre Panama was closed, and First Quantum to make up is putting a lot of emphasis on Zambia. And they have two big open pits. One is Sentinel, and the other one is Kansanshi. Those mines, if you look at the mineral resources that they have left, are in the 0.45% copper range. So a little bit higher than us, but then they operate in Zambia, US dollar-based economy, etc., much more expensive. So that's a comp. And then Barrick itself has the Lumwana mine, which is also operating at similar grades and is undergoing a major expansion at the moment. And they're doing that obviously because of good macro fundamentals, but also because these mines are very profitable, even at 0.45% copper. So that's just some comps as to why we are very confident that this project will work. It will be technically feasible and economically feasible. On the second part of your question, you said size, key metrics, potential M&A partners. So the technical study which we're preparing is looking at annual copper production of in the region of 80,000 tons of copper production per year, potentially up to 100,000 tons of copper production per year. Now, I would say the 100,000 tons per year copper production in concentrate, that is. So you produce, let's say, 400,000 tons of concentrate, which whoever ends up smelting and refining it will produce the copper. But 100,000 tons of equivalent copper production per year is kind of, I would say that's the Rio Tinto, BHP, major mining company threshold. And that's why we're aiming to get there. It would require a processing plant of around 24 million tons per annum. That's a large open pit, not quite as large as Bingham Canyon, but it's significant. And I don't think that our universe of potential acquirers is necessarily BHP or Rio Tinto. Well, that could be, you never know. I mean, BHP just made an investment in a small Botswana explorer, just as an example. But I think our universe really is the mid-tier, like First Quantum and others, or the Chinese groups, because very interestingly, if you look at critical metals, by the way, I don't like that term because copper is a base metal, not really a critical metal. But anyway, that's a political question. Let's call it a critical metal for now. China has cornered the market on every critical metal out there except copper. They own the processing and refining capacity for copper, though, and that's why I think ultimately China is definitely one of the likely potential acquirers here. We've done a deal with Chinese companies before. It was a very positive experience. Chinese companies do not have that many places in the world where they can go to anymore. They can't go to the US, can't go to Canada, even some countries in South America. Argentina arguably could be difficult. I don't know. But in Namibia, they can go to. And I'll end off shortly to give you some metrics. A US-owned copper company in Botswana was sold to MMG, which is a Chinese producer, 2 years ago for $2.5 billion. That project was called Khumagao. A lot of X's in that name. That project produced 45,000 tons of copper per year. It's in production currently, underground mine. So it's half of the project scope of what we are putting on the table here. So that's why I say this Koryx, even though we're a small company now, this project is very significant. We're looking at a capital cost probably around $1 to $1.5 billion. It's big. It's too big for us, but it's small, and the capital intensity is low for a potential acquirer from the names that I've mentioned just now.
If I had somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 to 200 million pounds of copper per annum in at least a 12-year mine life. So it seems like this will fit in pretty well here. So excited to see what else you guys come up with here, and then also some of those studies as this advances forward. Heye, appreciate the comparables. This is great. Good stuff here. Okay, I want to switch gears just briefly over to, because we covered off most of the other things I wanted to discuss. Real quick, the company does have exposure to Zambia. Just talk about any near-term plans with Zambia and if this will remain part of the company's strategy moving forward, obviously with Haib being the focus point, but just talk about the plans with Zambia.
Yeah, so we have 2 licenses in Zambia. Both of them have had very limited exploration, surface work, and maybe 1 or 2 drill holes. They're definitely in the right areas, and there's potential to make a discovery, in particular on the northern one, but that's a relatively small license. So, but they need work, and Zambia is complicated, much more expensive, and we've got to restructure the deal. We've got an earn-in on those licenses. We're busy with that, and we've initiated a work program. We're doing a drone survey, in fact, right now as we speak. So doing regional and surface type work, gearing up for drilling later this year. So yes, we will continue to spend money there. And we are also actively looking at other Zambian assets to try and bulk up. The ultimate aim, though, is to spin this out and to generate value for shareholders, because within the Koryx basket, we're not getting credit for it at the moment. And so therefore, the planned strategy is fix up the structure, add some value ourselves using our own money, then vend out, create some value, and then have Koryx focus on Haib in Namibia and sharehold, but generating some extra value for shareholders in the form of a spin out into another company.
An interesting area because we all know the First Quantums and the Barracks of the world are nearby in that area, the same district. Always interesting to look at Zambia. And Zambia, quite honestly, is still quite a good jurisdiction. You and I could probably say not quite as good as Namibia, but nonetheless, it's an interesting place to be and have exposure to. Well, Heye, short of any other comments you want to make, thanks for taking the time to introduce Koryx to our audience. Why don't we wrap it up here? For potential investors who are listening in, the company has a market capitalization of about 68 million Canadian dollars. Why should Koryx Copper be considered within the institutional, family office, and retail investors' portfolio at this stage?
I think 5 factors: quality of leadership, quality of the asset, strong financial backers, excellent growth potential through our de-risking and advancement, and you get all of it for a very low valuation. So the downside is protected. So to me, that's a no-brainer.
And Heye, for further information, how can interested parties reach the company?
Oh, you can email me directly. I really enjoy interacting with shareholders directly. My email address is hdaun, like Nelly, at koryxcopper.com. And you'll find it on the website too. I'll endeavor to respond, and I do this via WhatsApp, email, whatever. So that's the best way. Alternatively, you can call our investor relations lady, Julia Becker. She's based in Vancouver. And the numbers are on the website. And also at the bottom of every press release, we have her number. She can put you in touch with me directly, and then we can have a conversation.
Heye, keep up the efforts at Koryx. Really appreciate the introduction here. Quite an interesting story, and certainly one that needs to be looked at quite hard by all the folks listening in here. And we look forward to having you back to update later on in the year.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on the show again. Appreciate the exposure here.